Welcome to the Seller Dojo podcast. This is Theron Taylor, and I am your host in this episode where I am interviewing Manuel from the ImportDojo. Yes, we have brought the dojos together through a random Facebook comment. He saw us, we saw him, and it was a match made in heaven because we are here to bring you some of the epic information that he has learned and gained from 17 years working in the supplier industry for retailers in Europe, and then getting into his own products, his own private label, his own brand, actually, I should say, and getting into the electronics industry. And in this episode, we also go over how to contact suppliers, how to find them, some tricks on vetting them, payments. We go over some of the niche fairs and Canton Fair and other things, exhibitions in China. There is just a lot of really good information. So I'm just going to let you dive in right away and enjoy the episode. But definitely afterwards, check out the show notes for an outline of what's inside, and also join us inside the Seller Dojo Facebook group. Links in the description. I'll see you inside. We are here in the Seller Dojo podcast, and really happy to introduce you to Manuel. So Manuel lives in China, and he's doing really cool importing stuff. He's been in the business for 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, and he's on the ground, and we are about to pick his brain and see all of these juicy tips about how to get sources, get samples, find suppliers, and everything, like the secrets straight from China. So I will just step aside and let Manuel kind of introduce himself real quick. So how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going well, thanks. Been really looking forward to this. Actually, I've been in the business for 17 years.
Wow.
But I've only been living in Asia for the last 10 years. So I've been living in Hong Kong for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Originally from Austria. I was always fascinated with Asia and exotic places. And one of my first jobs was actually in the do-it-yourself industry within Austria's largest retailer. Mm-hmm. And I worked for them from 1998 until 2004. And they actually wanted me to work in their import department. And
that's perfect.
That's how I first got into import. That was in Vienna, and after a few weeks, actually, they asked me if I'd be interested in an internship in the Hong Kong sourcing office, the operation of the DIY retailer in Hong Kong.
So they sent you for an internship to Hong Kong from Austria?
That's right. And when they asked, I was like, when do I go? I was so excited to go.
Yeah.
And just later in 2005, I packed a few bags and I moved to Hong Kong, and I think that was October 2005. Yeah, so it's soon going to be 10 years.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, almost happy 10th anniversary there.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, so now that you got into this internship, what did you learn in that, and what sparked your interest to get into business yourself?
So first of all, when I was still working in Vienna in the import department, I was basically on the phone with my colleagues in Hong Kong all day, and I got to know a few things about importing, and it really interested me, and I was so amazed by all the dealings and by the industry that was going on over there in Asia. So when I was working as an intern in the Hong Kong office, I actually took care of a few projects for the retail in Austria, and I traveled a lot in those first 6 months, and I got really hooked, and mm-hmm. I fell in love, and I wanted to stay, and I did ever since.
Wow, there you go. So real quick, I just want to give our listeners a little background. So fast forward to today, you've got, we're going to go into deeper details later, but you've got your own brand, and now you are teaching a course, which I want to let listeners know. This is how I found you, is because I found the ImportDojo. So right. Can you just give us a brief kind of glimpse about what the ImportDojo is, so they can get an idea of some of the things that we're actually going to jump into in our following questions?
Right. So yeah, my brand that I sell mainly to retailers is called Mandarin Gear. It's a
Mm-hmm.
separate website. It's a separate business, and I do not sell that brand on Amazon. But I have other products that I sell on Amazon. And I think I got into Amazon. I think mid 2014. Yeah, just
Mm-hmm.
right after I started my own company, working full time on that since May 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the main income is still through my brand Mandarin Gear that I sell to the retailers in Europe. But I'll be scaling up the Amazon FBA business within the next few months, as I think retail business is really a dying breed. And
Well, yeah. I mean, the internet is just amazing. Shop from your home in your pajamas.
absolutely, I mean, people are getting lazy, and it's also it's very comfortable to order online. You can see the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
You can start trusting online shops.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah, a couple of years ago that was not possible in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, e-commerce is definitely the future. So yeah, when I started ImportDojo actually only earlier this year, it started out as a blog and
Mm-hmm.
just writing about importing, and then I realized that when I started my own company, many of my new clients that were not big retailers that I used to deal with before, they were unaware of a lot of procedures when it comes to importing from China.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, instead of explaining everything in the blog in detail, I decided to make a quick guide that I could send to my buyers that they could use every day.
Mm.
And yeah, what started out as a few pages quickly turned into the book that you
Mm-hmm.
can download on my site now. And yeah, the rest of ImportDojo, I soon noticed actually that people really wanted me to coach them one-on-one, because I've been living so long for such a long time in China, and I've got quite some experience dealing with retailers and regulations and certifications and compliances.
Mm-hmm.
But that really became unmanageable for me quickly, because one-on-one coaching is really
It's time consuming.
it's very time consuming. There's money to be made, but I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to make something affordable for everyone. And yeah, that's when I decided to do an online course that gives everyone the information they need.
Very cool. So Import Dojo is importdojo.com. And if you stick around towards the end of the episode, we're going to give you a little treat about that. But in the meantime, we are going to jump right into getting some of Manuel's epic sourcing and importing tips from the ground on China. So one of the first questions that I think it's a typical interview question, but it's one of my favorites as well, is what advice do you wish someone had told you, Manuel, when you first began sourcing from China?
That's a good question. Yeah. Actually, I was very lucky all these years. I've had great mentors along the way that really taught me the ins and out of this business. I mean, every company that I worked for before, I really was lucky. There was always a guy who took me under his how do you say that?
Under his wing.
Yeah, under his wing,
Yeah.
and taught me everything. But to answer your question, I'd say what I find most challenging is the cultural differences and the different style in working with Chinese factories in general. Because what is being said or promised on the phone or in an email or in a chat is not always being followed by the factory or the supplier. So often you will find that something you said or agreed on is being done completely different. So yeah, you need to have control mechanisms in place to monitor your orders, be it inspections, checklists, or even a regular Skype conference that you should set up with your supplier once in a while.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard that, clear communication and very specific questions to suppliers when you're talking with them is just so important, because if there's some small miscommunication, then the supplier just doesn't really, care. It's not their business on the line.
Absolutely. When I first contact the supplier, I will not bombard him with a lot of questions and what I need and want from him, but I will have a few bullet points that really point out what I need, you know, like the target price that I'm looking for, the minimum order quantity that he wants. Maybe I even ask for shipping costs like air freight or sea freight calculations. And I have a general checklist. It's a brief script that I use when I send to my suppliers.
Yeah, that is really great information. So on to the next question. I'm curious, and I think my listeners are curious. What kind of products are you an expert in? What do you source? And I've kind of read up a little bit on you, and it looks like you kind of go where other people might tread lightly or avoid, which is electronics. So tell me a little bit more about the products you're into.
So basically, I source all categories except food is one of the things that I
Okay.
have no expertise at all. And also textiles, I'm not so confident. But other than that, because ImportDojo, I also offer a sourcing service. And I get a lot of different inquiries on different product categories. But yeah, my expertise really lies within the electronics, because I've been in the electronics industry for over 17 years.
During your internship as well with a retailer, was that also like a lot of electronics? Is that why?
Yeah. Back at my first job in Austria, I was working in the lighting and in the consumer electronics department. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to Hong Kong. I was working in the lighting department, and then I had some jobs in between before I started my own company. But it was always electronics related, and I think I learned so much in this category that I think it's safe to say I know most of the regulations and standards that you need to know for electronics. Mm-hmm. And if you're very familiar with a certain category, and you need to know, and you know what you need to pay attention to, like you need to know what kind of certifications, test reports, or regulations you need to comply with, it's actually very safe to import electronics. I think you may have to include like inspections by third-party laboratories that can test and really make sure that your product is compliant. But other than that, it's safe to import. I think a lot of gurus out there, maybe Amazon courses or gurus, tell you that best not to touch electronics, but I think it's the most profitable category within Amazon.
Mm-hmm. So with a lot of electronics that you've seen in the past, I'm curious, like you said they're profitable. What kind of margins have you seen on electronics throughout your career?
I can give you two examples. The electronics I sell to retailers in Europe, I make a maximum of 15%. But when I sell my electronics on Amazon, I make up to 120% for some items.
Wow.
So the margin is really good on electronics. I mean, if you're in a really competitive area like Bluetooth speakers or headsets, I think the margin is 30 to 40% at maximum, sometimes even lower.
Okay.
And anything that is lower than 30%, I wouldn't even recommend to go into Amazon anyway.
I see. And so that's very cool. And I'm also curious, so someone just beginning, would you tell them to go into electronics, or would you offer them into a different category when they're just beginning, or if they really wanted to go into electronics? So what kind of categories or advice do you have in that department?
Someone just starting out, I'd probably not recommend electronics unless you have a supplier that really knows all the regulations and certifications that you need for the US. For example, for most electronic products, you need FCC approval, mm-hmm. and sometimes even UL certification. There are a few minor ones, but those are the two main certifications. Okay. So if you're sourcing in China and you have a supplier who tells you, yeah, we know, we sell on Amazon and this is the certificate that you need and we have it, then go ahead. But if you are a newbie and you're really starting out sourcing in China and your supplier doesn't know what you need either, definitely I would not recommend to move into the electronics. I'd mm-hmm. probably suggest kitchen tools, kitchen accessories, garden, patio, fitness, outdoor accessories, or even bed and bathroom products. Mm-hmm. But always items that lightweight and not large in size, because otherwise the freight cost will kill you, kill your profit. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So we've talked about a little bit about products and such, and I think a lot of people in the U.S. when we think importing from China, we automatically think Alibaba or AliExpress. So since you've actually been on the ground in Hong Kong, living there, and also working in this for a long time, what do you think about these websites? Do you use them? Are there other websites that we might not know about? Or what kind of advice do you have there?
Right. I've had my share of contacts within the last 10 years. So I do use Alibaba, AliExpress, or also global sources, for example. But when I source, I mainly use my contacts first. If my contacts can't help me, I'd probably go through a trading company or a few trading companies that I know, and will ask them first to help me look. And if that doesn't work, I do go onto Alibaba and AliExpress, or also global sources. I mean, both of them, or all three of them, are really great, especially when you're just starting to import. There's really so much to say about these. There are common pitfalls that you need to be aware of, but I'd really recommend maybe your readers or your listeners to go to my site, download the free ebook, and read the blog post. There's so much on there.
Yeah, there's also we will definitely link to that. And I remember also I found your Reddit post where you did a Alibaba tutorial and Ask Me Anything on Reddit. So I read through that, and it was just really great knowledge. Yeah. So I will put the link to that as well.
Right. There was a 20-minute screencast that I did on how I source on Alibaba and AliExpress. It's just basically showing people what they need to pay attention to, maybe giving a few tips where they could filter scammers or trading companies, and really to make sure that they find good suppliers on Alibaba. So yeah, I definitely recommend to check out the screencast. AliExpress itself is the sister company of Alibaba, and but most suppliers in there are actually trading companies. So they sell the stock of the actual factory. The good thing about AliExpress is that you can order really small quantities, so you can test the market. And if you're just starting out and you have a small budget, you can really test the market with AliExpress items. They also do offer like free shipping on some items, but I generally don't recommend it because they use China mail, which usually takes up to 30 days. So I'd say if you go through AliExpress, use DHL or FedEx or UPS, invest a few dollars more, but really make sure that you get your stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And can you elaborate a little bit more on global sources for people who are not familiar with that website?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty much the same like Alibaba, just a little smaller. Alibaba is based in Hangzhou in China, and Global Source is actually based in Hong Kong. So I'm really surprised that not many people have never heard of Global Sources, or that they don't know it, because I find them to be much better than Alibaba in so many ways. The suppliers on there are, for some reason, a lot more professional. Global Sources itself provides really amazing free service like e-magazines, and also they have buyer support, so you can just contact them with a product you need and they'll be looking for you, so they take off the work from you. So yeah, the customer support is really out of this world. And I also get the feeling that there are less scammers on there, maybe because the site is newer, and Global Sources is more strict in accepting suppliers. So yeah, definitely recommend to check out Global Sources.
Definitely.
I mean, if you're just starting out drop shipping, I would go to AliExpress. You can order like small quantities, like 5 to 50 pieces. Use drop shipping. Use the supplier's no-name packaging. You get a nice small profit on each product. And once you really go into larger orders, you can go onto Alibaba. That's where the real factories are mostly.
Okay.
And you will work with the real factories when you're doing private label. because on AliExpress you can't change anything, the packaging or the color, nothing. You can just order from the stock of the suppliers on AliExpress. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. This is a common question that comes up that I've seen, and it's about payment. So let's say I order 100 units from a supplier. This is after I've found through one of these websites. And so I've got 100 units and I need to pay them, let's say $2,000 or something. How do you go about getting that money to them and then ensuring that you're going to get your inventory? So people ask, do I pay through PayPal or do I pay through an escrow service? What's your advice on that?
For small orders, I'd actually recommend you to go through Alibaba Trade Assurance. So what they do is you can first you need to find suppliers first that offer trade assurance. So when you're on a supplier website on Alibaba, you can see if they provide trade assurance or not. That means they will put up an amount, let's say $10,000 trade assurance, which means that Alibaba protects the buyer's money up to $10,000.
Okay.
So say your order was $2,000 and you probably make 30% down payment so that the factory gets start working on your order. Alibaba will protect those 30%. And once your order is completed and the factory sends you like internal inspection reports, or they let you know that the product is ready, or you even send an inspection company, and if anything is not according to your order requirement, Alibaba will refund you those 30% or the amount that is protected within the trade assurance. You can also use escrow services outside Alibaba, basically where a third party holds the money that you send to them. They only release the money to the supplier if you're satisfied with your order. Okay. So how can you make sure that your order is actually manufactured according to your requirements is inspections. You got to send an inspection to really make sure, unless you really trust the supplier and maybe he sends internal inspection reports, something like that.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. So when I was reading your tutorial, I saw a really interesting tip of advice, and that was how you look at products based on their geography, because you've actually been in China for a long time and you actually know which province has the expertise in a certain industry for like electronics. So can you just quickly show us how we can find out more about where our supplier is at and how geography makes a difference?
Right. Actually, it's pretty easy. You can look on Wikipedia. So, for example, you type in the province of China. I don't know, for example, Zhejiang province, which has Shanghai, Ningbo, and Hangzhou, and then you can click through the entry on Wikipedia, and then you actually see what kind of product is manufactured in that particular province. It's not very detailed, but you can get a general picture. And the easiest way actually is to go on to Alibaba and look for a product. So you keep all search filters open, and once you have the search results, you can filter down by province. So let's say I want to find a Bluetooth speaker. You type in Bluetooth speaker, you press search, and then within the filters, you can filter down by province. And when you see the different provinces in the filter, you can easily see, based on the percentage of the products manufactured in each province, where the main manufacturing area is. Yeah, you can also look at that. Maybe that sounds difficult, but it really isn't.
Because once you search in it, you'll see that like 90 of the suppliers are in this province, and then the other province have like 3 or 4.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's really important to find the actual manufacturing province, because I think there's like 3 reasons. The infrastructure for this product in this province is good. It means that there are a lot of suppliers in this area, and they're also supplying components for the supplier's end product, so that makes the product less expensive in the end also. And then you probably have workers in this particular province who are skilled in producing this specific product category. And that most likely improves the overall quality of the product as well. And then for some provinces, factories get actually favorable tax rates, so that keeps the buying price low as well.
Wow, yeah, that's really good to know, because I had no idea that the location, in my mind, oh, they're sourced from China, and it's just one China, right? So that is...
You can basically say electronics in the south, furnitures in the southeast, tools and textiles in the middle, and then you also have textiles and maybe coal and other raw material you have in the north.
Okay, very good information. That's awesome. So on to the next question, can you tell me what are some of the biggest mistakes you've ever made in sourcing and selling, and something that we can kind of learn from?
I think the worst thing you can do is trusting suppliers blindly. I mean, once you start working with a supplier on a regular basis, you need to implement agreements and contracts, for example. And I mean, obviously, when you first contact a supplier, you don't drop all your terms and contracts onto him. You will work that out over time. But you should always have inspections, as so many things can go wrong during the production. And you need to have everything that you agreed on, maybe through email or Skype, written down somehow. I had a few occasions where I trusted my suppliers too much. For example, when I didn't have inspections, even with existing suppliers, and it really ended horribly. I mean, because when you work with a supplier for many years, things can go wrong, because the chain of command in the factory can be quite several layers thick, and that really complicates the process, and information gets lost along the way, resulting in problems during manufacturing. So, yeah, biggest mistake, do not trust suppliers blindly.
Definitely.
Doesn't mean you can't trust them at all, but just you need to have control mechanisms in place.
Yes, trust them over time, and trust them when you have third-party inspections looking over them as well. And
absolutely,
even when your supplier has been your supplier for years, that's golden information. So to segue into the next question, that's perfect, because I was just wondering more about how you navigate the parts of a long negotiation. When you're talking to suppliers and you're like, okay, now this is the supplier I might be working with. Basically, we're talking about sample fees, and what are some of your best negotiation tactics and what you should look out for when talking with suppliers and about money.
First of all, samples. So many people shy away buyers shy away when the supplier says, okay, sample cost is, I don't know, $50 for a product that actually costs only $2 or $3. But they want to see if you're serious. And you need to see this business. You need to see this as a business. And if you're serious about it, you will make the investment for the samples. I mean, there's no way around samples, because you need to hold the product in hand. I would never order a product in China without having seen any sample. I mean, I'm not saying to blindly accept sample prices or shipping fees. And there are ways around paying for samples in the long run to get your costs back, for example. You could just tell them to refund the sample costs after you place the actual orders. And most suppliers will actually refund the sample costs. And the payment processing fees can be really a nightmare, because I'm being a supplier myself. I also ask for these processing fees because they're actually there, and they reduce my profit as a manufacturer, especially when the margins are low anyway in the competitive product categories. Now I give an example. Many buyers ask me to accept PayPal. For some orders I do it, but if the order amount gets large, I don't. Because, say for example, the order amount is, like you said, $2,000. PayPal immediately deducts 4%, and then another 7% for exchange rates, and then another $10 transfer fee to my bank account. So essentially, out of the $2,000, I get $1,790 something, which is not fair for me either. So yeah, these processing fees are really there. It's not just a rip-off. that the factories try to think of. So yeah, when a buyer has agreed on the pricing and all the details, and then in the end he comes and says, okay, I want to pay by PayPal. I do it if the order is not too large, but I will add all these fees to the total amount. And that's why, yeah, like I said, the buyers think that we want to make an extra profit, but matter of fact, we don't.
Yeah, it's trying to return. Yeah, payment fees are insane sometimes. I really liked what you said earlier is sometimes if you ask, the supplier will often refund your sample fees. How would we go about asking for that?
Well, if a supplier sends you an email and you like the product and then you ask for a sample, and then he will probably tell you, okay, the sample fee is $5 and the shipping fee is $30 by DHL, for example. So you got essentially $35 that you need to invest. So I would get back to the supplier and say, okay, I'll pay the sample, but in case of an order, I will deduct from the actual order. I will deduct those $35 from the actual order. And actually, I've never heard a supplier refusing that. So you can get your sample costs back, but most people don't do this, and I don't even know why.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. So there you have it, guys. If you're gonna order from China, get your sample fee back. So
absolutely,
that is awesome. When you're first vetting suppliers, what essential questions do you ask every single time, and which ones are deal breakers?
There are the few common questions like, what is his MOQ? What is his price per MOQ? Say, for example, I want to get different price levels. Like, I'm not sure if I want to order 100, 500, or 1,000. So I will ask him to give me 3 different prices, for example. I will ask him what country he sells to, who are his customers. Maybe he can send me a bit of a presentation about his company. Most suppliers these days have a PowerPoint presentation, so it's good to get some background information there. I probably ask maybe what is his total turnover, just some random questions that I will get a feeling on the supplier. A total deal breaker is, for example, if someone, I get these quite a lot, and it's interesting. Sometimes I get like one-liners, like I want a price for this and that. There's no introduction, no name, nothing. I will usually ignore these emails, and suppliers will too. Another thing is a deal breaker is you should create an email that really connects with your company name. For example, when I, as the supplier, get an email from johndoe@gmail.com, immediately know that he's a small-time buyer or a newbie. And some suppliers know these things, and they probably won't even take him serious or quote him very high prices, or they will try to take advantage of him. So I'd say create a proper email address with your business name and introduce yourself properly in your first email. Ask the basic questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, your suppliers are real people too, and they're smart, and there needs to be some respect there as well. That's really good. And also, I just wanted to mention inside of the ImportDojo blog, there are some really cool samples for email templates, reaching out to suppliers and such. And we're going to include a link to that below. Awesome. And to fast forward a bit, once you're happy with your samples, let's talk about customs, freight forwarding, and how you actually get your inventory. And one of my biggest questions is, do you send it to yourself first, or do you send it to FBA, or do you send it to yourself for the very first shipment? What is your experience in this?
It really depends on how large your order will be, and then you either go through air shipment or sea shipment. Most FBA buyers will actually go through air shipment because it's just really a lot faster and more convenient. Sea shipment is something that is mostly only done by retailers because the process is quite complicated. And you need to, I would always recommend to hire a third-party logistics company. Most suppliers can actually provide you with one, so just ask your factory. Now, once you got the freight costs from the supplier, again, depending on the product and the size, you need to look at the proper labeling that you will find on Seller Central. Then you need to calculate your import duties and costs and additional fees like Amazon fees or the local shipping costs. I usually have a rule of thumb. I'd say from the factory price, add 30% on top, and then you have your landing price in the FBA warehouse.
Okay.
You need to make at least 30% profit margin. And if everything checks out, the duties calculated, the costs are in order, you got the labeling, the packaging, everything is clarified, then you can pull the trigger and place the order. Now, when you place an order, especially working on Amazon, you should also ask the supplier to put the labels and the barcodes, for example, the UPC, onto the packaging already, if you ship directly to Amazon. The supplier usually can do this within one go in the production line, and it costs like 2-3 cents, while I think Amazon charges 30 cents per label right now.
Oh, wow.
I think 30 cents, yeah. So if you can ask the supplier, let them do it. They usually do it, and it costs like 2-3 cents. I usually send directly with air shipment to Amazon, like I said, because it's fast and quite affordable. You should have an inspection in China. So once your order is produced, you should have an inspection, because if you ship it directly to Amazon, it's too late. So try to do the inspection in China and then either ship directly to Amazon, or if you really prefer to relabel, or if you have to relabel and repack because of your order quantity, send it to yourself first and then to Amazon.
Okay.
One strategy you could follow would be like ship a smaller quantity by air first, and then the rest sea to minimize the freight costs. But it really depends on the product. If maybe you've sold it before and you're planning on ordering a larger quantity, you could just maybe ship 100 units first by air, and then 2,000 by sea. And by the time sea shipment arrives, you're probably sold out already.
Yeah, that's definitely a good strategy for when you have the capital and you know that you're going to be selling and stuff. You know that your inventory is moving. That's a good idea. So pretend you are starting over tomorrow. What kind of niches do you think about? What niches do you think are the most promising, and what would you go into nowadays?
Good question. I'm a bit biased here because I'm in the electronics, so I think consumer electronics the most promising. You see so many apps and gadgets coming out these days, and they all need some sort of hardware to work with. So that is really where I would position myself if I would start tomorrow.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because earlier you said we were talking about not shying away from electronics. So you're saying even though there is a larger barrier to entry to get into electronics and understanding the regulations and whatnot, but you're basically saying you do it all again.
Oh, because yeah, actually you're right. You said starting over. Okay, if I really have to start over and no knowledge of electronics, I'd probably go into maybe kitchen tools or kitchen accessories. Something that is easy, lightweight. But say if I had an existing seller account and I'm not restricted in a category, I'd go for consumer electronics. And one niche that I think is really promising within the consumer electronics is virtual reality. That niche is really developing extremely fast. And if you can find something at the exhibitions or you find a factory that develops something for virtual reality, I'd definitely go into that niche.
Yeah, it's growing really quickly. I saw these really cool VR goggles, which are for flying drones, like the remote control drones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a camera on it, and then you put on this mask and you can fly with the first person view of this drone. And the YouTube video is just so cool. It looks like people are racing around through trees and through parking garages. Yeah, virtual reality is looking really awesome for the future.
exactly. Yeah. One thing I wish I'd been in earlier is the fitness and outdoor accessory category. I mean, like you see it on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere. Exercising, fitness, and going outdoors is just booming these days. But a lot of people have already picked up on that. You know, they're creating their private label, their brand around fitness and outdoors. So they cross product categories like headlamps or exercising tools. So people really jumped on that already. I think it's very competitive. So I wish I'd been in this one earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Getting fit, especially in the US where the Amazon market is like, it's huge because we've had these food problems and whatnot. So that is a good niche for sure. I just wanted to piggyback on what you said a minute ago, mentioning the exhibitions in China. So some of our listeners might have been to exhibitions. Some are probably really curious. So what are these all about, and what's your experience been going to them? Did you find any like epic niches or products when you have been to them before?
Well, there's a couple of really specific exhibitions within Hong Kong at the Hong Kong Exhibition Center, which is like you can find an exhibition for jewelry, and then 2 weeks later there's one for textiles, and then 3 weeks later there's one for wine or whatever. These are really specific, and they do have the trends, or where you can find some really exciting products. But I've also been to the Canton Fair every year, twice actually. So the Canton Fair actually has a lot. All of China is coming to the Canton Fair to exhibit. There is a lot of trading companies, a lot of agents, and you will only find a few suppliers that really have exciting products or that have even created a whole niche. I'd recommend going there if you're looking for new suppliers in an existing product category, but you won't find any trends there. For that, you would have to go to the specific exhibitions in Hong Kong.
Wow, that is awesome. I would love to go someday.
It's quite an experience. I mean, the Canton Fair lasts almost 3.5 weeks. It's the largest exhibition within Asia, and it's really quite an experience. The ones in Hong Kong are a lot smaller, and they usually are like 3 or 4 days. And quite often you can find actually big brand names at the exhibitions, like Sony or Philips. The last exhibition I've even seen GoPro. So they already introduced. You see a lot of new introductions, but the real big brands won't show the super hottest product that they will develop because China is copying the world, and there's a lot of factories on these exhibitions also walking around just looking at the competition and trying to copy.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. On to our next question, Manuel. What is an interesting trend that you've noticed from within the supplier industry in China that most people outside of China don't really know?
I think that especially FBA sellers, not many of them actually visit China ever. So they don't really see what's going on inside the factories, but they probably notice that factories are getting a lot smarter these days, and the factories realize that when they send you, the buyer, a simple Excel file with a picture in an email, it usually doesn't get you the sales anymore. So because customers are getting more demanding these days, and they require factories to be more than just a factory who sends you an email with a picture and the price. Especially Amazon sellers, they require a lot of product description, high resolution photos. They need test reports probably. So factories need to comply with that, and they need to keep up with the standards. They need to differentiate themselves from other suppliers by, like I said earlier, they need to provide background information, company presentation, high resolution pictures, and proof of the successful business with other clients so that the buyers will trust them. And a few suppliers have noticed this trend, and the smart ones, they invest into their company. This could be anything like they maybe didn't have a marketing department before, or they may be hiring overseas designers for their products, because I've seen some very interesting Chinese designs. So Chinese factories know this, and they invest into development and into these several different departments, or also to have an in-house photo studio or technical equipment that can test the products and the raw materials.
Yeah, and so basically these are the suppliers that are really getting savvy at becoming better to their customers and better customer service. So these are the suppliers you really want to find.
Absolutely. I mean, most of these things aren't really new to Western buyers. We kind of like take it as a standard, but not many factories had all these standards within maybe the last 10 years ago. Suppliers who really see Amazon as a big business and they want to be in it for a long time, they have to set these things up within the factory. They know that buyers overseas, when they, maybe 10 years ago, when buyers overseas saw a label on a product that said made in China, they knew that the buyer is probably put off by that. But China is trying to change that image and show the world that they can actually produce high-end products at really affordable prices.
Yeah, definitely. It was the same with Made in Japan back following World War II, because that was, it used to be a negative thing, and they really changed it to now things that are made in Japan are incredibly good.
Yeah.
Very cool. So this is the very last question. What is one weird lifestyle habit / skill that you've gained which you think helps you as an entrepreneur?
I've come to realize that you need a work-life balance if you want to succeed. I mean, yeah, I do work my sometimes 12 to 14 hours a day, but I do take the time to go to the gym, to eat out, to meet up with friends and travel as much as I can. I mean, working long hours as an entrepreneur is normal, but the thing is that you do it for yourself, and if you have passion about your project, you actually don't mind doing it. You're actually enjoying it. So yeah, I'd say try not to forget to live a little along the way.
Definitely. I think, yeah, we could all use some of that advice. That is really awesome. I appreciate all of the time that you've given us here and all of these epic little tips and advice right from the ground in China. We're going to have a lot of resources in the show notes, and you can definitely visit Manuel's website at ImportDojo. And I think we have a coupon, right? Is that true?
Yeah, I have a coupon for your listeners, for your readers. It's 10% off. I think you can include it in the footnotes.
Cool. We will put a link. We will put a link to the coupon in there. And so, if people want to contact you with questions, Manuel, what is the best way they can do that?
Just simply through my site, www.importdojo.com, or also at mail@importdojo.com.
Perfect. That is really awesome. Or if you have questions, definitely leave them in the comments below of this blog post. And if you want to get to the blog post, you can find the link inside the show notes as well. Stay tuned for upcoming interviews with Amazon sellers. I am really excited and grateful that you have come on the show, Manuel, from ImportDojo, right from the ground in China. My name's Theron. This is the Seller Dojo podcast, and we will see you next time.
Thanks very much.